Okay, so I think comedy is a very, it is a very personal thing. We all have different senses of humour, but in my view, and something that hopefully I demonstrate in the workshop, is that there is a common thread in comedy, and that is something that that is very innate in human beings. When you go, if you go back to when we were kids, it's one of the first reflexes, I think, almost with babies. You put a face in front of the baby, you whatever, and you get a smile, you get a laugh, and this goes on. And you see kids, they laugh a lot, and adults laugh a lot. So I think there is a common thread, even though we have different senses of humour. I think there is a little bit international, if you like, universal. There is something at the heart of comedy, and that's something that I try and impart in the workshop. That's in a way almost like a religion, that we have different branches. I think there is something very much at the heart of comedy. I'm not going to tell you too much now, because I don't want to give it all away. I think you can take it further than that. I think you say, why is comedy a useful tool for an actor? Why is acting a useful tool for a comic? Why is anything really? Because actually, I think as an actor, we don't want to be pigeonholed, into one particular thing. And I think everything serves everything. Any type of performance, if you're an actor who can play comedy, if you're an actor who can dance, if you're an actor who can sing, it's gonna enrich what you do, even if you are being asked to do that one thing. I think it makes you a much more rounded and much more interesting performer. I really think one informs the other. When I trained a lot with Philippe Gaulier, and he does many different subjects, and I always felt that the skills I had maybe at comedy really enrich what I did in other subjects as well, like tragedy, melodrama, because it just makes you a more rounded performer, basically. That's a very good question. Yes, I think that. I think the only thing I can really think of is that is the thing really of having to take it down. I think if you are a comedy actor, if you are a comic, there is something funny about you, and I think it's just learning the constraints, if you like, of whatever it is, whatever thing you're performing in, whether it be film, whether it be stage. I think stage is much more out there, much more. You have to be bigger because you've got to reach out further. Whereas with film, the little bit that I've done, it was much more about containing it, and also you can't be leaping around so much, so you have certain constraints basically. But at the end of the day, it is the same, because it's about you transferring something that is funny about you and delivering it to whoever your audience is. Well, that's a good question as well. It depends very much really on what style you're performing. I think one is always encouraged, obviously, as an actor that is performing comedy, by laughter, obviously. And sometimes you get an audience, they're more of a smiling audience, they're more quieter. It makes it more difficult. If you have a real storming night, the next night you're almost taking pauses because you're wanting those laughs that you had the night before, and they're not there. So you have to be incredibly sensitive to your audience. Now, obviously, there are different styles. There are some styles like clown where you're very much breaking down the fourth wall. You're with the audience all the time. So that's a very different relationship than if you are playing a comedy where we are pretending the audience isn't there, and they are observing us in our situation, in our kitchen or whatever it might be. So I think really, yes, there's the fourth wall, not the fourth wall. There's that, that is obviously very different. But fundamentally, I think the relationship is about being, listening to the laughter, and allowing yourself to enjoy that, and what's the word? Inspired by that, really. but not actually playing for laughs. I mean, that's very important. You start playing for laughs, people see, they see that. You know, you start, you know, trying to force it, people see that. It's a really, really delicate relationship. It's really funny. I've found sometimes playing comedy, you have something that you do night after night after night, it gets a laugh, you think, right, that's it, got that one, you know, got that in the bag. 2 days later, one night later, you know, you're playing again, not the same amount of laughs. And eventually that laugh goes. You can never work it out. You can never work it out. Why has that gone? I don't get it. You try and get it back, you try and get it back. You ask the other actors, what the hell was I doing? You just never get it back. It's a really, really, you know, sensitive, delicate relationship. I think the factor that hinders an actor's performance in comedy is themselves, basically. You know, you know, you've got to be relaxed. You've got to be enjoying it. You know, you've got to be open. And I think, you know, and if you're not, then that is you hindering your performance, basically, in a nutshell. You know, I just think that. You know, comedy is about relaxation and enjoyment, pleasure, fun. You know, it is a fun thing to do. What can be more fun than having people laugh when you do a gag, when you do a joke, when you say a line? And what ruins that is if it starts to become mechanical, and therefore you stand in the way, really. Oh God, there's so many wonderful comics, so many comics that I really like, you know. So John Cleese in 40 Towers, you know, Eric Morecambe, Tommy Cooper. I love the Marx Brothers, not all of it, but a lot of their stuff, you know, Duck Soup, for example. Laurel and Hardy. I don't think of one particular, you know, comedian really. Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon. You know, that wonderful film, Forget It Now, with Marilyn Monroe. Can you remember the one? What's it called now? It was voted comedy #1 at one point. Oh God, can't remember. Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, and Marilyn Monroe. I don't know why I can't remember now. Anyway, they dressed up as women, but you know, there was so many. I don't really have one that you know springs to mind. Those just, you know, those come out, and there's many others as well. I'm sure I just can't think of any offhand.
Do you think comedy has changed over the years, as in what we find funny? Maybe how comedy was played, maybe in the 80s in comparison to how it's played now.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you do look at some things, which you found really, really funny at one time, and then suddenly, you know. You look back at it and somehow it's not quite as fun as it was. A bit like music as well. It's changed, but it's still kind of the same in a way. It's weird. I can't really put my finger on it, but you see so many people, you know, comics of today, who are your influences. Well, some of them they go back a long way. You know, they go back a long way. Some of them say, well, you know, Tommy Cooper or whatever. You see the influences, but I think with the really, really good comics, I mean, I look back on Tommy Cooper now. You know, I look at Tommy Cooper, I think he's hilarious. I still do. I look back at Eric Morecambe. I think he's hilarious. I still do. You know, Spike Milligan. I think he's fantastic. You know, I still do find him funny. So you know, I think the great ones, they don't really change. You know, I think you know. But there are some. I mean, you know, at one point, you know, I mean, you know, the Carry On films. You know, when I was younger, I laughed at those. I look at them now and think, how could I ever have found them funny? My personal taste. Some people do find them funny. Good for them, you know. But so there is changing taste, of course, and sometimes some of the comedy from you know the 70s and whatnot has now been deemed inappropriate, and in many cases rightly so. And I might have laughed at them, but I certainly don't now, you know. But I think good comedy is timeless, really. I'm going to give it all away now, don't you? Got to be careful what I say here, go on. So the sort of, I mean, in a way, I feel that comedy isn't really a technique. Yes, it is in some ways, but in many ways it's not. So really what I look for in the workshop is what is funny about you personally. You know, that for me is at the heart of comedy. It's not about learning a technique. We're going to do funny walks. We're going to do, we're going to do a dramatic pause, whatever. We're going to do double takes, all this sort of stuff. That isn't, what I would call technique. But it's really what is individually funny about you. Because if you can find out what is individually funny about you, then then actually you develop technique. Because because what is funny about you is technique. It is it's just something that we find funny. What is it that you meet a guy and the guy is funny? He hasn't got technique. He's just funny. So I'm interested in that. So everything I do in the workshop is about, trying to help you find that is funny about you, which is about having fun. Is about you when you are buoyant, when you're having fun, you're a lot more amusing than when you're not. So there are many things I do in the workshop, but it's all about what is funny about you, not really about so-called technique. And I think that's the most important thing for a comic. So I think now if you've got a paragraph, in a script, there are some people that can make that really funny. They just do, first read through, because they are funny. There are other people that don't find that at all. There are some people that find, can make this line work, and other people that can't make this line work. There are some people that could walk on the stage with foliage all around them and say to the audience, I am a tree, and no one will laugh because they think, what's he on about? Whereas, like Tommy Cooper could do that, the whole place would fall down laughing. It's, again, innately, he's funny. Innately, the person that interprets a script and finds the something that's funny in it is a funny person, in my view. It doesn't. Whereas another person will really struggle to find that. You say to an actor, as I say that, you say to an actor, you're going to dress up like this, like a tree. You're going to go on and say, I'm a tree. There are many actors say, well, you must be joking. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. You'll get some actors saying, great. They'll see the possibility. They'll see the possibility of this could be really funny. I think it's the same with the script as well.